further ado, I will give the floor to Dr. Lakshman. He will speak for 15, 20 minutes for as long as he needs to. Uh, and then we will open the room for discussion. Uh, and please, when during the discussion, make your comments or the questions short so we can allow as many people as possible take part in the discussion. This is a different session because it's going to be recorded for internal purposes, but please refrain from, uh, doing a recording as well as using sort of like artificial intelligence app. This is for security reasons. Without any further ado, Dr. Watson, it's up to you.
Well, thank you, Amar, and all the distinguished actually troublemakers around the world. And being a troublemaker myself, I just feel your solidarity, and then looking forward to meeting you all in person and to work with World Liberty Congress, on how to promote and keep pushing democracy forward. I met Amar at Oslo Freedom Forum. We were taking a bus ride together, and I shared my thoughts with him. And he was so elegant and gentlemanly, and he said, "Yeah, I'll get back to you." And often, 90% of the time, people don't get back to you. But then I had this, read this long email from him. Hey, we need to have a Zoom call, and we need to talk. Oh, Leo is also there. Yes, my counterpart of Venezuela. My second name is Senge. Senge also means lion. So, yes. Um, and he followed up and we had a Zoom call. He wants to make sure that our presentation, I think, of a high standard, so my credential didn't matter to him. So after Zoom call, he was convinced that maybe I could be one of the speakers. So I think he didn't save the best for the last. Okay, I just happened to be the last. So don't expect too much. But what I'm going to present to you is 30 years of my work, actually. First 16 years I spent writing my dissertation on government exiles, at Harvard. And I finished my dissertation, and that was in 2004. And my conclusion was that democracy is regressing, and exiled communities can make some contribution. And at that time, there were around 19 million refugees, of which 9 million were political refugees, right? I made the case, look, they are the victims and they could be an agency or agent for democracy. And we're talking of 2004, right? And then we were talking about end of history, Fukuyama, Berlin Wall has collapsed, Soviet Union has collapsed. We all were celebrating. And then my conclusion was not received that well, but still my supervisors allowed me to get my doctorate dissertation. And 20 years later, I came back to Harvard because then I went to Dharamsala to run Tibetan government exile for 10 years. 20 years later, I came back to Harvard, and in 2021, I started auditing classes. And the name of the class was Democratic Backsliding, right? So everybody's talking about democratic backsliding. There are more non-democratic countries than democratic countries. And if you check, the data on refugees, there are various data. One is 117 million refugees, of which 29 million are political refugees, So you can clearly see when you talk about democratic backsliding, there are victims. There are a lot of people who are affected. And my point has been, why don't we use them, to train them and become Democrats, and then, and then they be potent enough to push back on dictators and authoritarian regimes around the world and assert a democratic system. So that was my argument. So I was, and interestingly, in the last 30 years, there are more organizations promoting for democracy. There are more funding promoting democracy, and there are more funding for electoral reforms. But the result is democracy is backsliding. So I said there is a missing link here, and one missing link is, exile communities. And then I've been making recommendation that exile communities should form government exile. Now, government exile is there is government exile, but it could be parliament in exile, it could be party in exile, it could be a coordinating office or agency for all the groups together under one umbrella. So that's my main argument. And then I also make this argument that we have to reimagine or reconceptualize democracy. Because if you have studied democracy, I'm sure many of you have, Robert Dahl, Schumpeter, Huntington, Larry Diamond, our friends, they all define democracy assumes state. Democracy assumes territory. Now we are in exile. So they say no state, no democracy. Now you need a different definition of democracy for exile, because philosophically there is contradiction between democracy and freedom movement, because freedom movement assumes, normally emphasizes unity, single leadership, single voice. But if you are democracy, then you assume, instead of single leadership, opposition parties, instead of single voice, freedom of speech. So and then there is fundamental contradiction between democracy and exile, right? So how you blend these two together and make it work is one of the biggest challenge for democracy and exile. So because I ran Tibetan government exile, it is a good model to look at. If you look at Tibetan government exile, we are happy to invite you to come visit Dharamsala. We have a functioning cabinet, we have functioning parliament, and we have 2 sessions a year, and then functioning, different offices, right? Office of International and Information, which has Tibet TV, media, all that, and Home Ministry runs refugee camps. Health Ministry runs hospitals and clinics. And religion and culture, very important, runs, supervises a lot of monasteries and nunneries. Finance Ministry runs our own bank and raise funds, domestically and internationally. So it's like a functioning government, but in a limited scale. That's all we need. We don't need like 30 or 50 ministries or agencies. We need 6 or 7 or 8. And then in the last 60 years, it has been the most effective, properly functioning democratic system that you can emulate. So that's the point I want to make. And then, why we should form government exile. It's main point. One, I think, is very simple. Autocratic system or the authoritarian system or dictators. So for people inside, back home, you must project them an alternate vision, not just vision, of functioning government is very important. So the people can see this is autocratic dictatorial system. In exile, there is a functioning democratic system. So not only you make a theoretical argument, but practically project it so that it gives people hope that, oh yes, this is the government or this is the system that we need back home. That's very important. And then to show separation of power, there is parliament, there is auditor general office, and then there is different departments running different welfare system activities, so that people back home can be convinced that yes, if they can run this in exile, this is the system we need back home, and not the system that they are under, which is very repressive. And then also, one key point I want to make is being a dissident, and being in exile, to run a small NGO is, I don't want to say easy, it's difficult, but if you actually want to go back home and run the government, you should have practice running a government. Advocacy and administration are complete, I don't want to say complete, but yes, 2 different things. You can be a great advocate, but you can be a bad administrator. So what happens, even if you restore democracy, but if you're not able to take power and run it efficiently, effectively, then you will lose. So there are cases where freedom fighters, they go back home After one election, they lose power. And the same authoritarian parties, they come and take over and they rule for a long time, right? And then also, if you have not contest election, election campaign is altogether different thing. You can run around advocating, but if you have not run an election, you have to go back home and again contest and fight election against these dictators, right? uh, Not necessarily the exact same person, but their proteges are there. So if you have never run an election campaign, you can't go back home and be able to fight. So there are cases. I mean, I don't want to name names here, but there are cases where they have restored democracy. For example, Arab Spring, many of the dictators came back. I mean, they went out of power, but who has come back? Who are in power now? Not the Democrats that we expect, that we ideally would like to see. So these are the reasons why forming a government exile, running an election, running a campaign, winning an election, all these are very important experience that you need. So when you go back home, you're able to run a campaign, win an election, and run your government efficiently and deliver welfare and services to people so that you get re-elected. Now, so this is not just theory, and we are not just alone. We have some success cases. For example, the Spanish government exile, Polish government exile. They were there at the beginning of the Second World War, and then eventually they did succeed. Not necessarily going back and forming a government, but they did succeed in putting enough pressure to bring democracy back home. Even Baltic diplomatic and consular representation from 1940 to 1990 really helped people in exile to get passports, to help them. And then also, they were very good at collecting information and providing information to their allies, to international agencies. That kept the pressure on. And that also helped bring democracy back home. And then, also like other political parties, they have succeeded. UNITA, ANC, SWAPO, even Venezuela, the Action Democratic, I can AD, right? They were in exile for some time, right? They did contribute at some time in bringing democracy back home. So not just theory, the exile governments, but it's few. They have succeeded. Exile political parties have succeeded. And then exile leaders also have succeeded. For example, Ramos Horta of East Timor. Now he's the president of East Timor, right? He was in exile for a long time. I remember meeting him and I remember asking advice from him. What should we do? He said, Lobsang, keep at it. Whether it's 5 people or 50 people, 500 people, you just keep fighting and that, your time will come. And Ramos Horta, it happened to him. Mbeki of South Africa, even Prince Alexander of Yugoslavia, right? So he went back and then form a party, and then at least try to bring democracy in Serbia now. And King Simon of Bulgaria, he formed part in the political party. He ran, contested, and he got elected. And then other negative cases. For example, Iran, Prime Minister Mossadegh was elected actually, but then the Western countries felt maybe Shah is a better ally for us, and then he was removed, and then Ayatollah came. So even Afghanistan, right? Mujahideen and Taliban, they've been exiled and they went back, and same system was implemented in Cambodia, also in King Sihanouk and Pol Pot and Hun Sen. They've been exiled, and then the same system ruled Cambodia for all these years. So point I'm trying to make is there's a positive correlation between democratic system in exile and restoring or bringing democracy back home, and negative correlation between non-democratic system back home, back in exile, bringing non-democratic system, whether it's tribal system or in a feudal system or theocratic system back home. So having democracy in exile will help you bring democracy back home. Now, easy. And why there are few successful cases and more failures in exile? Because there are major challenges. So one thing that I have the benefit because I did research on this and ran government exile. So if you understand these challenges, it will help you become a better leader. So number one challenge I already mentioned already, freedom struggle in exile and democracy, they have contradiction. Freedom struggle assumes single leader, single voice, and then single vision. And then, as I said, democracy, not single leader, opposition parties, no single voice, freedom of speech, and so and then not just there has to be diversity. So there's a fundamental contradiction both in theoretically and practically. How you combine these two and on a day-to-day basis. For example, I'm sure you all have similar cases. In America, freedom of speech is absolute. Um, you see people burning American flag, wearing American flag as T-shirt, even your shoes or socks, right? For Tibetans, to freedom, our flag is precious, it's sacred. If you have a person wearing a Tibetan flag as their pant, forget about shoes or socks, okay? It's a sacrilege, Everybody will condemn you. So that's why democracy in exile and freedom of speech in exile is slightly different. For example, as a Buddhist, Tibetans, if you burn Buddhist scriptures, we will say that's sacrilege. You are a bad Tibetan, right? But in America, you can burn, Bible or any religious scriptures. That's allowed. So that's why how we should combine democracy and freedom in exile. It's also a constant challenge. So that we must keep that in mind. Number two, your host country is very important. Host country can either derail you or keep you static. So choosing a host country is very, very important because now ideally you want to be next to your homeland. Proximity is important, but there are those countries in neighboring countries are autocratic regimes or leaders, then you better be further away from that influence, because host country can really, I if this is interesting, if other groups we can go into details as to what host country can do, help or harm you, and we have many examples. So that's very important. Because of the shortage of time, I'll be brief. And number two, fighting among exiles. But then we must understand why exile communities fight often. I remember going to Washington, D.C. They always say, no, these dissidents, they fight among each other. They just don't get along. They have 10 events on their anniversary. We don't know what to do. And I usually used to believe, the governments blaming the dissidents and exiles or the troublemakers. But if you analyze it, you find that people in exile, they go through trauma because they lost their country. They're separated from their family members and neighbors, and they're completely uprooted. And there's been research being done by psychiatrists and psychologists that those people who go through trauma, like Holocaust survivors, Armenian genocide, the trauma remains for generations. So those people who go through trauma are more emotional, less rational, less reasonable, so they are more stubborn. So obviously now, we know there are more emotional people, less rational and less reasonable people are put in the same room. They see things more black and white, right? They say, I'm right, you're wrong, right? So part because of that. Part again is because of the funding. For example, US or Europe, whoever gives you funding, funders are also left-leaning and right-leaning and middle, right? So the left-leaning will fund left-leaning, leaders, and right-leaning will fund right-leaning leaders, and the middle of the road will fund middle of the road. And then when you have 10 different organizations, 10 different funders, obviously there will be 10 different leaders and 10 different voices, So the funding also determines the infighting. So you just can't blame on troublemakers and exile leaders. Funding, psychology, emotional intelligence that you talk about, all these factors need to be understood by leaders so that when someone is very unreasonable, irrational, and I've encountered this in Tibetan communities, no exception. We also have differences of views and very sharp opinions. So as a leader, you must understand where that these views are coming from. So if you understand, you can help your community better. And then funding is very important. You need international funding. Again, as I shared with you, funding will influence your behavior, your actions of a different organization. And the domestic funding is also important. Very important. Having said that, one of the main reasons why exile governments have failed is because of corruption. So to begin with, you need a strong Auditor General's office, auditor's office, which has to be autonomous, and then which really needs, authority to investigate and prevent corruption. So otherwise, you have this huge event, and you inaugurate, launch this great organization with lots of funding, and because of corruption, it fails within few years, or or in a decade or so. So it's very important when you establish government exile. For example, Tibetan government exile is very, very strict. I had a job at Harvard when I got elected as the exile prime minister. I left my job, and the salary of Tibetan government exile, okay, as a prime minister, was $375 a month. Okay, they're less than per diem that you get if you work for U.S. government, State Department, right? Now, for us, it's a labor of love. That's why I went there. Now, even with that kind of salary, our auditor's office is so strict. Whenever I used to travel, let's say from Delhi to New York, upon return, I need my boarding card. If I don't have boarding card, I wouldn't be reimbursed, right? So with $375 a month, airfare is at least 3 or 4 months of my salary, right? First thing that I worry is not my luggage. I worry about my boarding card, So it's so strict. Having said that, Tibetan government, we don't have police. Arrest you or put you in prison, but they will name and shame you. So if you don't have boarding card, the auditor office will write a noting which will be submitted to the finance department and to the parliament, and they will read my name saying, upon my return, Lobsang did not have boarding card, suspicion. And sometimes I joke and I said, look, I flew to New York, now I have come back. It's impossible that I walk back. I must have flown back. Now, not having boarding card should not be a suspicion for corruption, but doesn't matter. Our audit office is so strict, they'll write a noting and they'll read my name, and I feel embarrassed, So this is also very important, funding. And then, obviously infiltration, assassination, co-optation, all these are reality. And we have so many cases, so that we all must be aware of how we overcome this. And then how do you have cross-continent based election, right? Now, I think you can have e-ballots. It's simple. You can have app where everybody can vote. You have simplified this. Tibetans, we have manual voting. Tibetans live in 40 countries, and votes are cast manually everywhere on single day. And it's open the same evening in front of 10 different people from different groups, and they manually count and declare the results. So it's very transparent. But now you can do with the app and transparency also. So, and then recognition of your host country is very important. And then how you gain legitimacy is also important. So I can go through down the list, and then obviously one obvious challenge is people back home will tell you, well, we are suffering, under dictators. You are in exile, you are not suffering, and how can you speak for us, right? um, and is your goal is to come back and rule over us, so that is also reality. And how do you prevent that? Now, as far as Tibetan government exile, His Holiness Dalai Lama is visionary and very wise. From the very beginning, what he said was the government exile is to be spokesperson for 6 million Tibetans in Tibet. They will advocate your aspiration, not with the goal to go back and replace you. If there is autonomy or independence in Tibet, you will elect your own leader back home. Tibetan government exile will be dissolved. So to prevent that potential, conflict between people back home and in exile, and we have come up with that kind of a strategy. So, this is also a reality, and how to overcome that and how you do it. Each case can be very different, and we must be able to, uh, navigate that in each specific situation. So these are the challenges that we all will face, and there can be other challenges as well. So we all must be aware, and if we can do that, then we will be establish either a coordinating office first. I mean, establish direct. If you establish government exile, is difficult. You can have coordinating office, party, Democrat Party in exile. Then, if it's functioning very well, then you can have parliament in exile. And if that is very successful, then if you have to provide a lot of services, then you can have proper government exile, like Tibetan government exile. So with that, now we don't have slides. Otherwise, I could show you a lot of photographs of how Tibetan government exile functions. But we will save that for a later time. I can see Amar is nodding, nodding away, indicating that I should end my presentation here and wait for your um,
I am
insightful questions and queries.
I am absolutely fascinated by this talk, and I think you're definitely going to be having this talk again with a different group, more specific group, perhaps from different countries and different regions in the future. So this is going to be the beginning of a long-term relationship for sure, because this is a very fascinating experience, it's a very fascinating perspective. Uh, Without any further ado, I would like to go immediately to our audience and have the questions. I have here Mayo who wants to have the first comment. Go ahead.
No, thank you. Lobsang, my friend, thank you very much. Thank you. It was a very well summarized challenge of the challenges that we have. And I think we can all relate to what you have said. And many of us are in exile, but we all have members of our movements inside our countries. I just want to briefly remind you what we are at the World Liberty Congress, and that we are so grateful that you are becoming part of our community. We started the World Liberty Congress 2 years ago with the idea of coming together the democracy defenders from autocratic countries. As you know, there is a lot of discussion about democracy, but when it comes to places where are ruled by autocratic regimes, it's a completely different challenge. It's very different, and I believe that coming together, those of us from different contexts, different countries, different backgrounds, religions, skin colors, but when we come together and talk about the challenges we have facing autocratic regimes, we are one of the same. We are very, very similar in the types of struggles that we face and also in the human complexities of what it means to be a dissident. The main challenge that we all have is to keep the spirits, to keep the hope, and to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And when we come together and we know that we are not alone, that light is brighter, that light becomes clearer. And that's I think the benefit, the main one of the World Liberty Congress, coming together to learn from each other, to support each other, and to figure out what things from others' experiences, even from the failures, because we not only learn from the success, we learn a lot from what has failed. Um, and I think that can be a way of being more effective in our advocacy. As you know, we had an experience in Venezuela that we had an interim government. I believe that Juan Guaido, who was the interim president, is joining the call today. I spoke with him yesterday. I know that you met him some time ago, but we wanted also to briefly share what was our experience, because we had an interim government that was a mixture between a government in exile and a government and the president being in Venezuela. And there were many things that were very positive. Unfortunately, we were not able to be successful at the main promise that we had, with the main objective, which was to transition to democracy. And of course, that took us to a roller coaster of sentiments, of emotions, of appreciation by the people inside and outside Venezuela of that effort. But I believe that there are some lessons learned, and I think for your research, it would be great if you can take the experience, which is very recent, of what happened in Venezuela. I hope that Juan joins us so he can make a comment. And finally, we want to invite you, Lobsang, to be a member of our community. We would be honored, as we spoke personally, to have you, your insights in our community. We have huge challenges, as you know, and we all know in this call. For the past 2 decades, democracy has been backsliding. There are not many good news in the world to talk about a new wave of democracy, but that's why we are here. We are here to build that new wave of democratization, to understand that the challenge in Tibet, in Syria, in Uganda, in Cambodia, in Nicaragua, or in Venezuela are part of a global struggle, because autocrats are working together, they are supporting each other, and they many times are more effective than the democratic community at a global level to support democracy. Just as an example, we had an election in Venezuela exactly 1 month ago. We won by a landslide. 70% of the votes went to Edmundo Gonzalez. And the international reaction is a perfect picture of the state of the world today. The day after the election, Russia, China, Iran, and within 72 hours, 55 autocratic countries recognize the fraudulent results of Maduro. On the other hand, the democratic countries have been slow, timid, and many times with no response to the type of challenge that we are facing internally. So putting all of this into perspective of why it's important, the election in Venezuela for Cambodia, or for the Tibetan community, or for Syria, is part of what we hope to do with the World Liberty Congress. We are a very young organization, very young movement. It's promoted by democracy defenders, led by democracy defenders. And I want to end with an idea that you shared with us that we have taken as part of the way in which we're building the World Liberty Congress, which is to practice democracy. Last November, we had our General Assembly in Lithuania, and we elected a leadership council. Many of the elected members are here in this call today. We also elected an executive council. Masih Alinejad from Iran was elected as the president. And we did so with the same approach that you just shared with us. Practicing democracy makes us better Democrats. And for those of us who live in autocratic regimes, many times we don't know what we are fighting for because we have not practiced. And when we go to an election, when we have to lobby for a position, when we have to negotiate for positions, when we have to govern and be transparent about the governing that we are leading, is part of the practice of being a Democrats. And hopefully soon many of us will go back to our countries in a democratic process, and we will have responsibilities to become effective democratic leaders. So I want to thank you, Lobsang. I want to congratulate you and the Tibetan community for the great example that you have built over the past years. And we would like to invite you as a permanent member. We have Shemi, who you know, who was born, she always reminds us of this. She doesn't know Tibet. She was born away from home. But the exile community has been so strong that she lives as a Tibetan, even though she doesn't know her country physically. And she is a permanent voice of Tibet in our community, the World Liberty Congress. So thank you, Lobsang. We are very grateful for your participation. We hope that this is the beginning of a long-standing relation between the Tibetan community and the World Liberty Congress. And I would like to end by saying that even in the darkest moments, we need to be hopeful. Even if the world today doesn't look very promising for the struggle for democracy, we all need to be very hopeful, and that's part of what we are building, a hopeful movement to fight for democracy, to build democratic institutions, and to be successful. And the success of Tibet and of each one of our countries will be the success of all of our movements. So thank you very much, Lobsang.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you so much for your kind words. And we will meet often, next time in person as well. I didn't share this. I am writing a book about the academic research and my experience running Government Exile. So this book will be a manual for all our friends to learn from mistakes, and then also the positive cases, so that we all could strengthen our foundation for democracy. And then one lesson that we Tibetans learn is that our first generation who came to exile, they all thought they are going back very soon. So they didn't even build proper buildings in Dharamsala, where Tibetan Government Exile is located, right? But after 60 years, our experience is that the dictators have stamina. You also need stamina, So if you want to sustain yourself for a long time, organized entity, whether in the form of government exile, parliament exile, party in exile, or coordination office in exile, is very, very important. So I do remember meeting friends from Venezuela and Afghanistan and Syria. When I told them, hey, you should establish something in exile, they also, no. Maduro is so unpopular. Half the people in Venezuela against him. He's going out next year. Now it's been like more than 10 years, right? So my point is that we all, on the one hand, we need immediate goal, hope for the best, but we must prepare for the worst. That mindset is quite helpful. And also in my book, I have strong recommendation, like the idea behind World Liberty Congress, is that exile communities should be strengthened to run their own entity. Funders' role should be limited. Consultants' role should be limited. So that is my recommendation. So when the book comes out, and I can share based on my experience and both research, I will be making that argument both in DC and various capitals around the world. Amar, you are muted. Yeah.
Yeah, Amar, you're muted.
I got it. Thank you very much. I want to go to Joshua, but before that, I just want to know that Chemi has put in the message, send the message, thank you very much for your insights, and apologizes that she's not able to talk directly because she's not studying so she's very appreciative of your talk and your presentation. Now we'll go to Joshua. Thank you very much for being present. Please have your point.
Amar, there seems to be a problem with your microphone. We're not listening to you very well. So if you can check that.
I've
So
been
I think
struggling
volunteering.
for quite a while in my life. Let's Is it better now? Can you hear me? You can turn on the mic.
It's better. It's
It's better.
better.
Okay. I I think I've resolved what the problem was. Uh, uh, I, I wanted to basically just note Chen is and the message. In Costa Rica is maintaining. Really appreciate your insight.
Omar,
And
we
I want
can't hear you well.
Yeah. Amar, I think we have to drop this other World Liberty Congress icon that's on here.
Yeah.
Shut that off, I think will help you.
Now I can see hands here. Volunteering. Maybe you can ask question and then
Yes, yes, let's do
yes,
that. Let's
let's
do that.
do
Let's
that.
see the
Okay.
hands.
Then
I
yeah.
want to go to Sochua. I want to go to Sochua.
Oh,
Hopefully,
Sochua. Okay. Yeah.
yes. Go.
Yes, good morning from Rhode Island. It is an honor for me to meet you for the second time, Your Excellency Prime Minister. I'm from Cambodia,
Yes.
former vice president of the opposition in Cambodia, and now the leader of the Khmer movement for democracy from outside of Cambodia. My question, we are in the process of building a strong voice for the diaspora, and I feel that there is finally some form of unity, which is a plus for us. But this may be because it's still young, so we are not fighting yet. Later on, it will fight. So my question will be for us: we are starting right now with unity. How can we be prepared for stronger and stronger unity? Number one. Number two is what is the role of the international community? Is there such a role? How do we use it, and how do we ignore it? And what is what would you recommend? Thank you.
As far as unity is concerned, I went through these 10 challenges, right? So many government exiles collapsed, failed because of these 10 challenges. They picked the wrong host country or funding, corruption, infighting, all that. So if you study all these 10 challenges, you become a better leader. So to have unity, leadership is very important. Right? So if you get right leader or leaders, unity. I don't think you can unite everybody, but vast majority can be. One example is, for example, World Uyghur Congress. They started 20 years ago. So it was a small organization, and Uyghurs have different organization as well. But they got funding from NED, 75,000, and slowly they started. And in 20 years, at least in the last 10 years, they have become kind of a de facto government exile. Uyghurs have started rallying around World Uyghur Congress, even though there are other Uyghur organizations, partly because they got the most funding, partly because of leadership, right? So you can learn from that. It's not just Tibetan example. You can learn from them as well. Now, international organizations, yes, you need them, but you should not be dictated by them. So it's a very difficult choice. Funding is important for us, but how do you draw this line? I can give you many examples. One funder came and said, "You got $2 million. We give you 1 million. We'll keep 1 million for ourselves." Literally, in Dharamsala. I said, "No, you can't do that. This is U.S. Taxpayers' money. I can't take that, and morally and ethically." I rejected them. They got shocked, and I withheld the funding for 11 months. They said, "Why? You got $1 million just like that." And finally, USAID came and said, "Could you take this $1 million? We'll give you additional $2 million, and you can spend the way you want." And then I made sure that organization doesn't get 50%. So ultimately, we negotiated maybe 37%, something like that. So I got 63% plus $2 million. So I made $3 million. $3 million plus dollars because I withheld that money. So how do you say no? So they get consultants will come. It's I'm so and so consultants, right? And I say, you know less than me, us, right? So I mean, so if you have a government exile, you can say and do all these things, negotiate. If you're just an organization, they dictate you. That's why I said one of the reasons why there's this unity is different funders come with different ideological leanings, right? So right wing will let you, pull you towards right, and left will pull you towards left, and then their ideology and their agenda and interests will influence and determine you, and you'll end up fighting among yourself because of these international organizations and entity and funders, right? So we all should be aware of that. And if you have a stronger one organization, Tibetan government exile, when we get funding, we just give 5% to whoever this funder, and we give 7% as administrative costs. 88% goes directly to the ground, to the field, and we deliver results, right? So, and then international, yes, international community is very important. They'll help you magnify your voices. But then, yeah, I mean, they're there when they need you. They're not there when they don't need you. So we should be aware of the Tibetans. We have been through this roller coaster for 60 years, right? So we have been influenced and we have become mature. So yes, we all need any support from anywhere, including international community, but we should be able to say no when we don't need them, and we should embrace and hug them and thank them when they come to a help, when they need when we need them. So that's why, to strengthen yourself again, you need an entity, you need an organization structure.
Thank you.
Yep. Any more questions? Yes, we have Voltaire. Please, it's up to you now.
Hi, my name is Alexa Zamora. I'm from Nicaragua, also in exile. I'm very excited about hear you because part of my professional line of work is making research about pro-democracy movements in exile. And one of my cases of study was Tibet, in fact, and of course, Venezuela. But my my question is very related with the last thing that you were saying. I know that when you are a government in exile, you are in a better position to negotiate, but it takes time and it takes a process to become a government in exile. And when you are starting in this process, you also need the resources that you don't have by yourself. So I have this theory that is easier to become or have more possibilities of succeed in terms of build this government in exile if you can involve your own community to make this process sustainable and self-founded. But is it a good choice? It could be a good choice. And how do you develop that trust in the people? Because it's people, regular people who's working day by day to make the money and give the money to someone. It requires trust. And by the other side, how do you build that representation, let's say? Because a lot of different factions of the opposition are going to say that they represent the real necessities of the people, of they have the representation. So how do you deal with those obstacles at the very beginning, and how do you navigate in the waters of the international community and the donors agenda when you are not a very solid and constituted pro-democracy movement, or let's say government in its style?
Now, we can have hour-long discussion on this, right? Let me give a Tibetan example. We have Green Book, Tibetan identity card issued by Tibetan government exile. So we collect $100, $50 to $100 from Tibetan people. So that is domestic contribution, right? So that money, we spend it for all political activities. And 90+% of Tibetan people contribute Green Book. And not just that, right? A lot of people in South Asia, they want to have Green Book. Why? The Green Book, our book, has become essentially our passport. So when you apply for political asylum in America or Europe, anywhere, they'll say, are you Tibetan? If you say yes, they will say, where is your green book? Based on green book, our office give them, authentication letter. And that is accepted by judges and the government, saying he is or she is authentic Tibetan. So there's so much in demand that people in Nepal and Bhutan and South Asian countries, they want to get Tibetan book because they get political asylum in America or Europe. See, now, but then that green book took like 50 years to evolve and develop. And that same green book is used for our voter registration card. See, one. Now that also collects our, funding. So, you could do that way, Having said that, asking money is difficult, but if you perform and deliver, people do contribute. There is a Tibetan saying, right? Public mouth is devil, but public hand is of gods. So they criticize you vehemently, but they give you lavishly if you do well. Right? So we have, and then number two, when you talk exile governments, you must run exile government quite frugally. For example, the Tibetan government exiles budget is anywhere from $35 million to $45 million a year. And we run 100 schools, okay? We teach about anywhere from 10 to 13,000 children. And we run like 15 hospitals and monasteries, And then we have like 1,500 bureaucrats and 13 embassies, semi-embassies around the world with $35 to $45 million a year. I had a job at Harvard. I left that job and took $375 a month, and traveled around the world on economy class. So it's a labor of love. So it's opposite of Singapore. Singapore pay you really high to prevent corruption. We pay so less that those corrupt people will never come and join Tibetan government exile. You see. So you can you must set up a government. You have to sustain for a long time. So domestic funding is important. Once you deliver, funders will come and give you more funding. So you can evolve. Now I know the World Uyghur Congress is following our model of green card, identity card, and then the Uyghur people have started contributing. At the moment, it's voluntary. Ours is also voluntary. As I said, Tibetans can contribute, not contribute. You can't do anything about it. But 90+% of Tibetans contribute. They're very proud to have green book. That's over time, and it has become like a de facto passport for us, right? Identity card. Yes.
Thank you very much. Now we have Armando. Please go ahead. Armando,
my friend Dolkun is also here.
And Dolkun is as well here. So it will be Armando, then Dolkun. Please, Armando, you're on mute. Yes, we can't hear you. Can you hear Armando, anyone? We can't hear you for some reason. So let's go to Dolkun, please.
Well, thank you, dear friend Lobsang. I'm happy to see you. I just landed from vacation with family to Munich. So I was joining 30 minutes late. Thank you very much. You give some example of the World Uyghur Congress. I had all this. Actually, and in May this year, 20th anniversary establishment of World Uyghur Congress, Lobsang, and I invite him, and he gives the lectures. How built the government in exile. Very influential discussion, and we got a lot of beneficial for your talk. So I thank you once again here as a member of the elected leadership council's member of the World Libertarian Congress as well. So and also we learned a lot from the Tibet government and exile Tibet community. For example, as you say, for example, and the Tibetan Green Book, we call we just follow up your experience, and Uyghurs see Now, each Uyghurs over the 18 years old Uyghur who live in exile should be paid some Uyghur share. Of course, this is not, we don't have force, this is free voluntarily, but we're quite successfully. Just the last 1 year, I personally raised more than 1 million euro. We bought open office and conference hall in Munich. So just all we got experience from Tibetan, and also we got some experience elected election. So we will hold October 8th General Assembly. New leadership will be elected. New leadership should be elected by the Uyghur delegation, from the Uyghur delegation elected from 28 countries from the Uyghur community. So this is all we learn from the Tibetan experience, from my good friends Lobsang's experience. So this is how I would like to highlight it now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dolkun. Armando, I'll get back to you if the voice, to see if the voice has improved. We still can't hear any sound, unfortunately. Yeah, we cannot hear any sound. So are there any more questions? If not, yes, Sophie, you want to say something?
Yes, I try to turn on my camera, but I don't know why I can't. But anyway, I really appreciate this presentation. Your name is the first one or second one? I don't know, Sangay.
It's okay. My name is Leo also.
Okay. Yeah, I really look forward to read this book. You know, I have been thinking since I joined the World Liberty Congress how to unite mainland China team, because besides Tibetan team, Uyghur team, Hong Kong team, we have the mainland team, which is a big group, but we have a lot of confliction in United States. The team are very segregated and a lot of misunderstanding, and the people are fighting each other. The group are separating. I feel I really wish to have a face-to-face discussion with you or learn from Tibetan team how to unite people, because I am thinking to set up a kind of organization to unite the mainland people outside, to form a solidarity, to work together, to build a kind of a cultural group. Because the problem of mainland China is the Communist Party destroyed all the religion. We have no religious connection like Uyghur or Tibetan team. And culturally, we also don't have an ID. It's very difficult, to be honest. So what I want to say is, I just want to say it's a very short time. I can't discuss all the detailed questions with you, but I would like to set up a connection with you to read your book, to continue the discussion and to do something.
Thanks, Sophia. So I hope to publish the book by next year, so that's my plan. We have finished 6 chapters. By the way, like Leo mentioned, we have contributors from Venezuela, we have Belarus, and Syria, and Amar has been helping. We might get from Azerbaijan, Hong Kong, Mongolian, and Uyghurs. So this is, on the one hand, is based on my dissertation and my experience, but we have also invited contributing writers, and based on their writings, we will do further analysis as to why these communities can or cannot form government exile. So my theory is that we all can form government exile. Now, as far as Sophia, your question initially also someone mentioned about unity. Democracy is a unifying factor. So there are so many leaders in exile, each claim to be more legitimate and more authentic than the others. But let the people vote and elect, and whoever is elected, others should respect as the leader for that term, right?
That's a good idea.
So otherwise, yes, but what happens is once in exile, After some time, of course, you might be the most prominent dissident the first few years. After 5 years or 6 years, you need democratic mandate to validate and legitimize that leader. And if that leader doesn't perform well, someone else will be elected, right? So democratic election is
To start with election.
yes, and the election is very unique. For example, unique thing about me is that all our leaders who were before me were born in Tibet, okay, or either had feudal chieftains ranking or aristocrats or monks, things like that. I was the first one who was born in exile, the youngest ever who got elected, but then the people elected, and then others can say I'm more senior or more wise than me, but then through election, I got elected, and people accept you as the leader. So democracy is very unifying.
Okay.
But then if you don't use it properly, it can be divisive as well, right? So there's a lot of criticisms and a lot of different views. That's part and parcel of democracy.
Okay, very good advice. Thank you so much. Thank
you very much, Sophie. And I think I'm trying to get back to see if Armando wrote something about his question. He wrote it in the, or his comment, he wrote it in the chat. So I'll read it for you. Your Excellency, first of all, I want to express my deepest respect and admiration for your leadership and your ongoing efforts for the Tibetan people in exile. My name is Armando Armas, and I've had the privilege of being elected as a member of parliament in Venezuela, where I served as the chairman of the Foreign Policy Committee. Unfortunately, in 2020, I was forced into exile due to the political situation in my country. However, I remained actively involved with the interim government experiment during that challenging time. Today, I would like to take this opportunity to express my interest in connecting with you for a particular reason. I believe that there is a significant potential for collaboration between us on an idea that I have been working on, which revolves around the role of organized diasporas and their potential influence on democracy promotion policies in major donor countries. The collective experience of our communities in exile offer unique perspectives and a wealth of knowledge that could be instrumental in advocating for democratic values globally. If you are open to it, I would greatly appreciate the chance to discuss this idea further with you over email and explore how we might work together to advance our shared goals. And thank you very much, and look forward to the possibility of collaboration. So basically, the idea is to collaborate on pressuring or advocating with democracies on how they can adopt better pro-democracy agendas across the globe.
Yes, Amar, please share my email with all the participants, and they are welcome to send me email, and definitely we all are in same boat. We all will sail to a same direction, that is to bring democracy, restore democracy in the world. So we all are in it together. So I think we're running out of time, but one key point that I already stated, but I want to emphasize is, I remember we have someone from Nicaragua here. I'm meeting a very senior person, and he said, well, democracy, government exile is too complicated. But I always tell Nicaraguans that we should be prepared. When the dictators leave, we should be prepared. I said, how can you be prepared if you have never run a government, if you have never contested an election, right? When the dictators leave, you have to go back and contest election. You have to run the government. If you have never experienced before, you can't.
Yes.
So that in itself, running government exile, running election is part and parcel of unifying people, bringing together and showing alternative to people back home. So, that way, I think, not only we have to advocate democracy, but we must practice democracy to make people believe that we are actual true Democrats.
Great.
Thank you very much. And with this very important insight, I think we can bring this talk to an end, even though the subject...
Amar,
important. Yes, Leo, I was going to.
No, just very briefly. I think we have Juan Guaido also in the call, and I just wanted to give you the chance to just say hello to Lobsang and to just briefly share his thoughts on what we heard, and maybe we can do a discussion like this with Juan going forward. So Juan, if you are in the call, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Leopoldo. Thank you, Lobsan. Honestly, in reflection, Lobsan and all experiences of the leaders in the meeting. Democracy in this moment is a strong cause for us, where it's undermining around the world. And thinking about the experience in Venezuela, the current situation back in our country, that we won an election 1 month ago in almost a miracle way. We proved the winning of Edmundo González Urrutia. It's a challenge itself, how to stop this kind of regimes, how to support the front, how to react with the international community, how to create a common cause. So it's very, not only inspirational. Hear you, Prime Minister. Thank you for all your work and your struggle, freedom and democracy, and our deepest respect and solidarity for our people, to our people. Also, we recognize the profound strength of resilience that the Tibetan people embody under your leadership. It's important, not only way to struggle to raise your voice, your people's voice, but also to make our case, because the war of democracy, we need to amplify our voices to ensure that our struggle is not just here, it's about to make actions, it's about to make possible changes, not only in Tibet, but Venezuela, Latin America, and around the world. We already see back in Venezuela in 2019, like when you are in a trendy moment, it's easy to look for support, or maybe media, but in the darkest situation is that moment is the important moment to all of people from Cuba and Tibet, Africa. I think this front, these leaders in exile, it's a unique opportunity to make this common cause not only trendy in some points or in some countries, but also a global commitment to support and to upholding the principle of liberty and democracy. So I want to thank Leopoldo to invite me to hear you. I already see you in Washington maybe 2 months ago. It's always an inspirational moment, but again, not only my solidarity and all that we can do, hopefully to recover our country for democracy or liberty, and to make a better world. So thank you, man. God bless you.
Thank you. Let me end, because we have the privilege of hearing from Juan and Leopoldo, and and I can give you I can share one story that connects two of you, and also Amar, the Syrian interim government. So my story is, I was Prime Minister government exile 10 years. So when I used to visit Washington, D.C., they never allowed me to enter the State Department or the White House, because they say you're an exile government in Prime Minister, and because of our dealing with China, you cannot enter. So I used to meet them outside, right? And then the interim government of Venezuela was found, and then Syrian interim government was found. But all of you went straight to the 7th floor of the State Department and met Hillary Clinton. And I used to meet people in the State Department. I used to say, well, now, whatever. No, you're exile government. I said, Juan is up there in the 7th floor, right? Syrian interim government. They just formed recently, and we've been here for 60 years. How come I'm not allowed to enter the State Department? So I used to, in 10 years, I used to go to DC 3 or 4 times a year. Can you imagine? I got rejected 30 or 40 times by State Department, White House. And whereas the interim government leaders, Juan and Leopold, they all went to the State Department, White House, photo op with presidents and the Secretary of State. But can you imagine? I did that. Finally, right, in October of 2020, I entered the State Department. And in November of 2020, I entered the White House. And then in December of 2020, we lobbied and passed a law, Tibetan Policy and Support Act 2020. In that law, I put my office, right, and Tibetan government exile. Now, finally, it's a law in America which acknowledges my office and Tibetan government exile. Now, my successor can enter the State Department, White House. So being an exile leader is tough.
Yeah.
But there's also hopefulness in it. That's why my friend Leopoldo was talking about hopefulness, because if you keep persisting, if you keep fighting, right? Even if you're rejected 30 or 40 times, never give up. Show smile, show compassion, be diplomatic, but keep pushing. I did that. Finally, I entered the State Department and the White House. I passed the law. Now it's law in America to support Tibet and provide funding for Tibetans, So you can make it happen. So, let's all keep fighting. And that's why I want to share my 30 years of work, and to make this into a book and a manual for all other troublemakers to keep making trouble. And we are the good ones, okay? Yeah. And then, often we say, whenever journalists ask me a question, rationally, what do you think will happen to Tibetans? I always say this, I don't answer questions which is asked rationally, because we are irrational, we are exiles, right? I don't believe in rational choice theory. I believe in irrational choice theory. We are troublemakers, we are irrational, we are emotional, we are stubborn, but we make history. Together, we will make this world a better place, a democratic place, and we will get rid of all these dictators. Don't worry, because I'm Buddhist. We believe impermanence. They all die, right? So in the last century, 8 empires collapsed, okay? In this century also, 8, maybe 18 or 20 dictators will come and go. Don't worry, our time will come, but we keep fighting. We have to fight, persist.
If you allow me, I'm going to tell that history and that from the experience in the
Yes.
I want to share that kind of reflections in this moment. But when the people ask me in Exile, how are you doing? How are you going? One, I say free and alive. To continue the struggle, to continue supporting our cause, our people. So thank you for your words, and God bless you. Man.
Thank you.
Yes, we will succeed. I believe so too, Sangay. I totally agree with you.
We will succeed.
Yes, because
we are the good guys.
On the right side. We are in justice side.
All these dictators will go to hell. They will burn for life, for eternity. Don't worry.
Yes, absolutely. I am a Christian. I believe exactly the same as you believed. Thank you so much. I'm so inspired by you.
Well, this was really why this was our sort of a way to conclude the summer series is with Dr. Lapsang, because he is inspirational and he's definitely gives us reason for optimism. And I think we come up with this talk knowing that with sort of a lot of fuel inside of us, knowing that we have inspirational leaders among us and we can make it happen together. This is the whole point of, as Leopoldo also mentioned, of coming together in the WLC. So together we give ourselves hope, inspiration, strength, and experience, and we can definitely make a difference. We emerge stronger. Thank you very much, Dr. Lapsang Sangay, for being here. Thank you, Juan Guaido, for your contributions. And thank you, Leo. And thanks, everybody, for being participants in this session. And we look forward to you seeing you again in future webinars. In about a month or so, we will begin our new, more serious series that we have actually learned from this experience that we have put together here. Thank you very much, and see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All the
Free
best.
Venezuela. We will make
Free
difference.
Tibet, free Venezuela, free Nicaragua, free Cambodia,
Amen, amen.
Free,
Thank you so
free
much.
India, free China,
Democracy
free
prevail.
Uyghurs, freedom to all, free Uganda,
Yes.
Yes.
free Zimbabwe. Thank you, friends.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Leopoldo and the team.
Thank you,
It's
William. Thank you.
Truly wonderful.
Felix,
What's that
thank
gift?
you very much.
Thanks.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Felix. Oh,
Yeah.
good to see you.
Well,
Thanks,
my
Amar.
favorite two people, Lapsang and Felix. let's
Yes.
conspire together. Thank you very much, really, and I look forward to seeing you again. And I will be you will be sort of hosting smaller events, more focused on basically the idea of what the Tibetan governments did. I'm actually hoping that to organize a delegation of LC leaders, of our leaders, to go to
Yes.
Dharamsala.
Yes. Yes.
So we're looking into how we're going to fund it now, but